Okay, I came back. I had fixed that little bit. Thought I did. Um, and I checked on this a half hour ago. It was still too sticky and stuck to the mold, and it's just a little over an hour later. And I think it's going to come free. At least I'm going to come check on it. If you cannot check on your mold within an hour or two after having put it in the mold, you probably should have waited to put the clay in it. So one thing I will say is that this process probably needs about 3 hours of your attention. So putting it in the mold took about a half hour, but then I need to be able to come back within an hour or two in order to take it out. Because otherwise I risk the clay drying too much. You could put some plastic over the backside of the mold, but the plaster will continue to pull moisture out of the clay. And so even if you cover it in plastic, it's still going to start drying on you. So make sure that you have enough time to complete the process. I have a workboard that I am going to be transferring this clay onto, and I'm going to take this out and then cover it in plastic and come back another day to work on it because I want to show you how to wrap up your clay to store it until you're ready to work. So I've grabbed just a small chunk of clay out of my bag of clay, and I am going to use that to assist me in seeing if I can get these edges to release a little bit. And some of them are coming free. So I can see a little bit of, I don't know if you'll be able to see that. When I pull on this, a little of this clay is starting to move forward. So I'm just trying to get the edges of the mold to release, and that's telling me that it's ready to go. That moved a little bit. So some sides are a little more stuck. And that might mean that I have to wait a little bit longer. So maybe what I'll do is I'll pry just these edges here and then come back maybe in another 30 minutes. So actually you can really see, I think, how this is wobbling free. Can you? Gotta catch my light up top. You see how you can catch that little shadow in there? So that means that the mold is starting to release, or the clay is starting to release from the mold. There we go. So I'm even getting it wiggled a little more. This clay is still sticking to itself, so that's great. But if it feels like it's not doing anything, you can add a little bit of water to the clay. Okay, so if you've noticed, one of the things I've been doing is I've been like working my way around the mold with my clay. And that's just sort of like slowly prying it loose as I go. And I'm starting to actually now get a little movement right in here. Patience is really important. I don't often have a lot of patience, so I have to like slow myself down, remind myself of all the work I did putting in the clay to begin with, and that if I rush through this process and I tear the clay, I'm just gonna have to start over, which happens. But you know, we want to make sure that we're patient. The clay will let us know when it's ready. Okay, that's great. but because I was going slowly around, I also am starting to free it. So I think that I'm actually not going to leave and come back. I'm going to try to get it out so that I can keep the video rolling. I guess if I mess it up, then I'll show you how to fix it. So before I was going around the outer edges with the clay, and now that whole rim is released, I'm doing a little bit kind of one row in from there. I can't really see what I'm doing, but meaning I don't know how much I'm releasing there, but usually I can see that a side does kind of move. Now I'm being extra cautious because this is my first casting or press mold, and I don't have a lot of clay to spare. But you learn a lot about your mold through the repetition of using it. And so I might realize, like, oh, actually, if I just put this on the board and flipped it over in an hour or 2 hours, it would totally fall right out. Or I might learn, if I don't wait 2 hours, then I just end up tearing the clay. So all of it's a learning process. It might even be good to take notes on what you're doing, especially if you're interested in mold making and making lots of different shapes. So I am going to try to actually, you can do one of two things, whatever you're most comfortable with, but this is a little shallow. If I put it on the board here and flipped it over, it's going to fall, you know, just the distance there. That's maybe not a big deal. I could also try to get my hand underneath to see if it will catch it and if it wants to release. And it did. Ah! Oh, I've got a little smile. Let me put it on my workboard and then I'll show you what I ended up with. Well, you might not think it's a smile, but there is my casting. That's pretty good. I almost lost it. I have a little bit of plaster here and there. This is within the acceptable range, and it will become less and less as you make more castings. I'll probably just take a little needle tool and clean some of that out. But you can see, like, over this eye and on the forehead where there are seams, and I'll work to smooth those out and join those together. And you'll also see that, I don't know, can you see that? My nostril tore a little bit on this side. And that is indicative of what is called an undercut, where you have a shape that curves over and you're trying to pull something out of it. Well, if it's holding on to it or catching it, then it's gonna tear. So again, that's something that I can just easily fix and repair. And it's probably gonna happen every time I make this mold. It's gonna get that little tear and then I'll just push it back into place. Okay, so as I said, I'm gonna cover this and come back another day. So you'll want to cover it really well with plastic, especially if you are coming back in a day or a couple days. And so this workboard is wood, and it's not the same kind of absorbency as plaster, but it will pull moisture out of your clay. So if you need this clay to still be plastic when you come back to it, then you want to take a light sheet of plastic. And I guess you don't have to use the whole thing. I'm going to cut this a little smaller. But I'll lay plastic under my piece. And then I'll also lay plastic over my piece. But as I'm working on this and I need it to get to different drying stages, then I might start loosening the bag a little bit, or not putting the plastic underneath and over the top. Or I might just drape it over it so a little air gets through. So A lot of babysitting to do with our clay, but I'm not ready to work on it yet. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, and so I'm just going to tuck it in real good. And I might even just, since I'm able to pick this up, go ahead and slide it under there. If you can't pick up your piece from underneath and you can't get the plastic under, it'll be okay. Just sort of be gentle around the edges. Okay. I'll be back at some point, show you how to sculpt back into your forms.